So what's going on with the Anacrusis? We haven't had an update in a little bit. And we just take some really big steps behind the scenes that people may not be aware of us trying to really engage with the community and do something different with the game and where it stands. So let's talk about that. But first, let's talk about for a minute some of the steps we've already taken. And so one of them, a big one, was after it didn't hit during Game Pass and all of that, I personally just thought of my legacy as a game developer is I didn't want to release something and then have it die in early access and never come out. And so I made the commitment that I would make sure that the game came out. And so with that, I covered salaries for the last year of development. Never going to see that money back. We're not going to sell that many copies. But I just thought the deal I'm making with you buying my game means that I'm going to finish my game. And luckily, I can have the money that I can do that. So I can make that choice. But with that choice, we also made the choice to move off the back end into a back end that could live even if the company went under. Stray Bombay is not going under. Anacrusis isn't going away. Just breaking out some stuff here. But that was my thought. I wanted to make sure that the game could live on. And so with that, we moved off of this expensive back end, spent a lot of time and a lot of money to move it so that it works with Steam and EGS, which is what we should have probably started to begin with. I know, but we got there. But with that, as long as those services stay alive, the game will continue to work. Now, there may be some update that happens to those services, and then we'll have to figure that out, and we'll cross that bridge. But for right now, the game's finished. You can play it, and you can continue to be able to play it. That's the deal I made. It's a $10 game. It's good. I love it. We're playing it today, 8 p.m. If you ever want to play Versus, learn to play Versus tonight. It's Thursday night, by the way. But that's kind of where we are. And then I'm like, well, okay, the community has been really great. We have a small but really engaged, really creative, crazy community that's just made some really special stuff around the game. So how can we empower them to do even more? So if you go on the workshop now, you can go on and see a bunch of like Henning's crazy maps, or Khan's doing this whole thing with ultra violence, and there's a bunch of headgear and other just weird, cool stuff, right? And you could check that all out. But I'm like, well, what could we do where we could incorporate that into the game so it could be cross-play, because we still have some people on Xbox playing, and just kind of make it and say, this is the community update, and then figure out a way to not be exploitive about that. But let's first cross the first step. And the first step is like, I get a bunch of people who are like, hey, just make the game open source. Woo! Yeah, it doesn't work that way. It does not work that way at all. Oh my God. All right, just for the back end. The back end on EGS and Steam, there's secret keys that you communicate back and forth when you're doing like the handshaking, right? We have licenses with both those companies for that back end stuff, as well as licenses for being posted on Steam to begin with, as well as licenses for the Unreal editor, none of which we can just give out to anybody else. It's not our right to. And anybody who using that has to fall underneath kind of our control. Like they do it with our blessing. And so we had to figure that part out. The other thing is, we use a bunch of third-party software. We use Vivox for voice. We use Wise for sound. We messed up our Wise thing, and the license is out. And like, you can do some Unreal sound now, but like, it's my fault. But like, we got ourselves in a bad spot. But we can't just give you those licenses because they're not ours to give, and we're not allowed to give you API access or anything else because it's those companies, and you would have to sign a contract with those companies for that. And we have no way of verifying that. And especially think of like if our company did go under, how we have no money, but we're going to spend all our time still working on the game for like, okay. But then there's other stuff you probably don't think about, right? There's a bunch of like third-party tools for inside of the editor that we've licensed that we would have to remove if we weren't the owner of it. And then also there's art. So now our art is mainly made by us. Valve. I wish we had that big of a team. Stray Bombay, though, right? Stray Bombay, over the years, we had a bunch of really talented artists that made a bunch of cool stuff. We also licensed out stuff, some third party that we paid for directly, and some we actually used marketplace assets. Because guess what? You can't tell this pipe's from the marketplace or not, so we'll just put a new shader on it and it'll be good. But that pipe, the license is you are not allowed to create an asset that then other people can use in other games. And so if we don't exist, and we just give everybody access to all the art, that means you could take that art out and use it someplace else, and who's going to enforce that? Nobody, because that won't be unenforceable, because we won't exist, right? It's you just can't do for that any of that. And that's how modern games are made. They're made with this nest of third-party software being used to make it, third-party software used in all parts of it, a bunch of third-party systems that you're interacting with, right? It's just not what we made. We're just not somebody sitting down at a open source C++ editor writing every pixel by hand. It's just not how games are made anymore. And we want that because it's easier and faster. A small team can make a really cool game in 2 years. And so walk through with the lawyers of what that looked like, and I could give somebody access to what we call it Perforce, right? Perforce is our source control, and they now have access to that. But that's not enough because how do we build what'll go on Steam or Epic, or excuse me, on Xbox? And so for that, we have build machines, and that's what I was cleaning up and getting ready because I wanted to make sure that that worked for them as well. But we have to give them access to that. And what that does is take them; they can work in Unreal, upload to the Perforce, and then from Perforce kick off a build on the build machines, and then that'll suck in, build it, and then it'll push it out on Steam. And now we can do daily play tests of new builds, and then we can just keep building from there and make new stuff. And that means the game can keep changing. And some of this stuff that the modders have made, I want to put into the main game because it's a really good change. It's some really good stuff. And some of it's just taking it in different ways. And it's ways that I kind of disagree with the design, but it's their stuff now. So they should be able to do that. And they should be able to put it, as long as we have still the core game that's there, they should be able to have this game next to it. And since we're not worried about like matchmaking into it, because it's like, oh my God, you're going to split up the player base. The player base is already split up, right? It's all over. It's $10. Check it out. But like, be clear, you're not going to just match into random versus games. You're going to come to a community and play with your friends, or you can play solo, whatever. But like all of these mods now are built on top of that, understanding what the game is. And so I'm embracing the idea that you might play this solo or whatever. And it really works really well. And they're really fun. And this will be the first step to that. And at some point this fall, we will do an update, and it'll be called the community update. And that's what this will be about. It'll be about all of this other work and trying to put it in there. And then, like I've said before, is if it takes off and sells crazy, we'll have to figure something out. Right now, we're all just trying to agree that we want what's best for the game and how does it move forward. But it really is that thing of like, modern games are built in a nest, and you can't just give one point of contact out or just release it and say good to go, because it'll die. It would be disingenuous for me just to give you the game and say here it'll live forever, because it won't. It needs all this other stuff around it to work. And so to get that to work took some time and took some legal paperwork. They have to sign it, and that kind of limits the number of people we can do it. Also, on Perforce, we're limited, and we may move, if more people wanted to do it, would probably move off of Perforce to something else so that we could have more people under it and not be so expensive. It's $500 a person on Perforce, which is no big deal when you're a company going, but when you don't think the game's going to sell all that much, that's a lot of money. And so, yeah, that is where we are. I'm excited. We still play it. We still play it weekly, at least. There's still a lot of active development on it from a bunch of people, and it's really cool. You should check it out. And it's only $10, and there's a ton of content right now. And I can confidently say there is $10 worth of content in the game. We are currently not in the space and exploration sale because we have no exploration, according to them. They meant a different kind of exploration. Steam! But whatever. We're not in the space and exploration sale after. I'll let you know when that is. Or you can just buy it for $10 because it's $10. But, and the link's in my bio. Or I'll put it in the YouTube video. But that's where we are. It ended up taking months to figure out how to give somebody who didn't work at the company access to the game in a way that we legally respected all of the agreements we had in place, the agreements that would go forward and make it real and not just pretend that this is what we were doing, but do it for real, where that person could literally press a button right now and put something live. And yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's kind of fun, kind of excited. This is just the start. If you want access to the mod tools, let me know. If you want access to the Perforce Depot, that's a different story. Gonna have to know you a little bit. Strangers don't get access to that. But for the mod tools, just ping me and go from there.